And good morning, Michigan. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick on this way too cold Friday morning. I mentioned a few moments ago that the temperature on my computer, I have no idea how my computer knows the temperature outside, but it says it's 12. But right across the street at the baseball stadium, the Cooley Law Stadium, it says it's 2 degrees on the electronic display out there. So, speaking of electronic displays, University of Michigan announced yesterday a $52 million expansion of Chrysler Arena and an additional $20 million for new scoreboards. Speaking of electric lights, high-definition screens, the whole 9 yards, state-of-the-art stuff, and those new scoreboards will be in place in time for the upcoming football season and in time for next season's basketball season at Chrysler Arena. That just, for some reason, I was thinking, electric lights. And I thought of scoreboards. One time, Scotty Bowman, when he was coaching the Red Wings, failed. Typically, a shift in a hockey game is 40 seconds in length, and Scotty's got his boys out on the ice, middle of a hockey game, and he forgets to change lines. And the guys who are on the ice are dying because they've been out like a minute and a half. And the guys on the bench start screaming at him, "Scotty, you got to change lines." And Scotty says, "Oh, sorry, I was just looking at the scoreboard." And the guys go, "Scotty, it's just lights." So there you go. Gary Austin in the newsroom as always. Good morning, Gary. I know it was the main topic of discussion yesterday, but what was your takeaway from the state of the state the night before last?
Well, I tell you, Rick Snyder, very direct. Now we've had a few days to absorb.
Did the whole speech without a script.
Yeah, he just no teleprompter. He just is like he was standing in front of a boardroom. That's
well, he was working off of notes.
Yeah. He did have those, but that was it.
Yeah.
And I tell you, he came across as a guy who's never been in politics before. He sure didn't sound like a politico up there. However, on the flip side, he was very well prepared, very smooth, very direct, and I think he said what most of us thought he was going to say. The state's in a big jam, and we've got to work fast to get out of this mess. He made that very clear.
I read a story, the headline of which was that the speech was long on specifics. I frankly didn't find it to be long on specifics. I could only think of maybe 2 or 3 actual numbers that he threw out. For example, the $550 million for the new bridge to Canada. The fact that the state's on the hook for, what was it, $83 or $89 billion in pension liabilities from public employees. That's the group that's being singled out right now. And the other one would be the repeal of the single business tax. Other than that, those are the only specific numbers that I.
Well, but Rich, too. I mean, he jammed a lot in 50 minutes.
Oh yeah, no question.
Yeah, and then the reaction from the Republicans, of course, upbeat. Democrats are saying, "Hey, you know what? This is okay. We're going to work with this guy." So that's the way it's shaken out now. I mean, it's one thing to make speeches, and
yes.
Snyder has proved he's very good at that. He's very good at detailing things. You can tell he's very good at managing that sort of thing. But boy, now it comes down to
when's the budget
getting things in place.
When's the budget due? That's not just the next big thing. That's the big thing. Period. That's when the questions are all answered.
Well, yeah, he wants to get that wrapped
when's
up
that due?
As soon as possible by mid-year.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants to really work fast here, and he's got to, first of all, I mean, this is the way the process works is, I mean, he says what he thinks is important, and he details that as any governor does in their state of the state. From there, lawmakers then kind of decipher what's up here as as we heard over the last few days on this program, a number of lawmakers, putting their take on this and their input. But really, the key step next is the whole budget process. A big book is all put together, and that ends up on the desks of state lawmakers. They go through it, and they have the final say.
Sure.
And then once that's done, the governor has the eventual final say. But I think when compared to previous years, especially in the last administration, the last 8 years anyway, where there was not a clear majority one way or another, Rick Snyder, he's got the Republicans in the House, he's got the Republicans in the Senate, and he's a Republican. So how smoothly and how quickly this this moves along, by comparison, I would guess it's probably going to move quicker because everybody's all in the same party that's going to be making all the final
Will
decisions.
we see his budget proposal by, say, March 1st?
Oh, I'm sure.
That's 6 weeks away.
Oh, yeah. We're going to see bits and pieces here in the weeks ahead. In prior administrations, little bits and pieces would leak out here and there. There'd be, the administration would say, okay, this is a key focal point, and they would focus on something, and it would make for great talk show chatter, and then something else would be released, and then there'd be more reaction. And I'd often wonder too, Rich, if this was done with the intent of sort of getting a reaction. In other words, without making anything official, stuff's kind of leaked out here and there, getting reaction from those in the House and Senate, and then Joe and Jane on Main Street. The administration listens to that and then absorbs it and figures out, okay, maybe this is a direction we should continue to
These
head
are,
in.
of course, called trial balloons.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And
Yeah.
one of those would be a finite end, a certain cutoff date for welfare payments, for example. And I've heard a proposal being floated about that public education will not be restricted to K through 12, but community college and university funding will be rolled into that total, and that's got some educators pretty concerned.
It does, and I think those who put this budget together as you say, trial balloons, well put, as they look this over and they get reactions from those, for example, in this case, in the education community, and if it shakes out in such a way where obviously there's a lot of opposition and some lawmakers are saying, you know what, this isn't the direction to go, we're not going to support this, those putting the budget together say, okay, there's no point in pursuing this if we're not going to go anywhere with it anyway. So we'll head in another direction, maybe modify things a bit. So that's the way it works. But it all comes down to what those in the House and Senate think, and then back to the governor it goes, and whether or not he signs the package that's put together, that the House and Senate puts together. I mean, there's a lot that's got to be done here. And Rick Snyder wants to do this in a lot shorter time frame than his predecessors have. I think that's the real challenge here. I mean, it's a big job to start with, putting this all together in the first place. We're talking about so many budget cuts,
right,
and just not enough money to go around. That makes his job doubly difficult.
And he has set a 182-day deadline to get things done, and I give him credit for being upfront about that. I liked the idea of the gauge that he announced during the State of the State address, where you can go to a website and check the progress. And I like the idea of the 180-day.
Yeah.
It's like FDR's first 100 days. He didn't limit himself to 100 days, but 182. He's putting a lot on his plate. I approve.
Yeah, well, that 182 puts us right around mid-year, and his Michigan dashboard idea.
That's it.
Very unique. Yeah, first of all, I think it's a neat idea. Everybody agrees. I mean, it's cool. Go on the internet, see exactly what's going on in state government. I mean, who can argue that? But I think the name is kind of Michigan Dashboard, of course, the tie with the auto industry, and we could kind of see everything in front of us, the dashboard concept.
I didn't get that until you just mentioned that. I never made that connection.
Well, I think that's whoever came up with that idea, A+ in the Snyder administration for that idea, that concept, because it all ties together.
It's ranked the red, green, and yellow. Just
that's
like
that's a stoplight. That's not a dashboard.
Yeah, but it still works the same thing.
Well, I'm just saying the way my mind works, I just didn't quite make that connection.
Yeah,
but that's good.
Yeah, the colors and the flash and dazzle.
Right.
We can.
And that's what a dashboard does. It tells you what the conditions are in your vehicle or how fast you're going. That sort of. That's perfect.
It is. Yeah. Hey, since we're on the theme of high tech here, how many of you, and you know who you are, you're on your computer, right? And
yes.
you're blogging or something, or you're on some internet site, and someone says something that really ticks you off, and you say, gosh darn it, I'm really mad about that. I'm gonna tell that person what I think. And without really thinking ahead of time, in other words, without stepping back and saying, okay, what am I about to do here? You act on emotion, and you hit that, the keypad, and then all of a sudden a bunch of stuff goes out, and you're really mad at this person. You may say some things that you may end up regretting later.
I've done that, yeah.
Well, I tell you what, for those who do, listen to this story. For posting libelous things on an internet site, a guy from Georgia has been awarded over $400,000. A jury said this guy, Gene Cooley, deserves it. He was the object of anonymous postings on a website where he was accused of a whole bunch of bad stuff. I mean, really, really bad stuff. Well, the poster thought, of course, you go on, you're anonymous, right? Because some of these sites you can put some, some phony,
Sure.
name or whatever. You can appear not to be yourself.
Sure.
However, once it's on, and it's very easy
Yes.
to track through a computer IP address, and the police, law enforcement, they can do this
There you go.
very easily. So this
In
gal,
a-
this woman, she was found out, and she's
Yeah.
the one, the target of this lawsuit, and voila, she's in the hole, $400,000.
Well, and there's a woman in Pennsylvania who made some postings on Facebook. I just heard this last night, threatening a judge, and she's been charged with something on the order of 24 felonies. And or not 24 felonies, but she faces 24 years in prison if convicted.
Well,
So you got to be careful.
You do. And we've seen the billboards and the state police when it comes to, we've seen them around the state. Once it's online, it can never be deleted. And it really is true. And of course, the state police postings are referring to those who may go on and try to do something illegal, obviously, when it comes to, internet sex crimes and that sort of thing.
Right.
If you think for a second, whatever you're doing, you're going online, you're being anonymous, you're not, because you can be traced somehow. The technology is there.
I've never, except for one occasion, typed anything on the computer that I regretted. It was an email, and I tried to retrieve it, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah, well,
But,
once you hit that send button, it's gone for good.
Have a good day, Gary. Nice
Okay,
chatting with
Rich.
you. Take care.
You bet.
Gary Austin in the newsroom. A new president of Google is a U of M grad, engineering grad in 1995. We'll talk about that. We're talking a little bit about high tech. Ken Dallafor coming up. Also, we'll talk football. He's not coming up. No Ken Dallafor?
No, not today, but I think we should get the callers involved with this high-tech stuff because there's a lot going on with that.
Sounds good to me. All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back with the high tech as we continue here on MPS in the morning. And Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick on this oh-so-cold Friday here in our state capital and throughout the state of Michigan and really throughout the nation. If you've listened to a national newscast this morning, the lead story is the weather, which always strikes me as why would the weather be the lead story in January? But they're getting hammered. St. Louis, 15 inches of snow, as we mentioned earlier. Amanda Waller, a producer here in studio with us, who has an appalling lack of knowledge about hockey underwear. I mentioned earlier on the program that I'm wearing my hockey underwear under my clothes today. And it's
You
not
said
dirty.
that, and I
It's-
was thinking like Red Wings boxers or something.
Oh, yeah, I
kind of
could-
like
oh,
where your
yeah.
mind goes.
No, when you play hockey, what you wear underneath everything else is just fleece wear. They're essentially long johns and a heavier than normal T-shirt that you would wear under your jersey and under your hockey pants. But you did not know that hockey players wear garters. These
I
big
didn't.
tough guys out there, 6'4", 220-pound guy who's just out there to kill you. He's wearing a garter.
So they're like lacy with the bow and
No,
the
they're
diamonds and ribbons. and
no,
stuff.
they're more jockstrappy, kind of elastic, very very manly garter. But they're there to hold up the long socks that you wear that go all the way up over your knee to mid thigh, up under the hockey pants, which are shorts. The hockey pant does not come down to your knee.
I'm really
So-
glad I didn't play
And
hockey.
but I personally, because I'm a goaltender, I don't wear the long socks because my goalie pants cover up that part of my leg.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was when I'm at a Red Wings game, I noticed Jimmy Howard, same thing. And I'm wondering if technically he's out of uniform because he's not wearing his hockey socks. But you'll see
you
if
get docked if you don't have socks on.
well, you do in the NFL if you're, they're very strict about that. The National Football League actually hires a guy, and he makes pretty good money to go around and make sure that nobody's wearing a logo that's not approved, that everybody has their shirt tucked in, that the socks are regulation length, all sorts of things. And, for example, a player at the end of a game last year, he'd caught a touchdown pass or whatever, and he was being interviewed, and he was wearing a cap, a logo cap for some company, and that company had not paid the NFL to appear, in an NFL-related activity, and the player was fined something like $15,000 for wearing a cap in a post-game interview.
It sounds worse than school. You know that rule, like if you put your arms down to your side, your shorts have to be longer than where your fingertips
Exactly,
are,
yeah.
and like you can't wear a hat inside the building.
Right.
And
Well, the NFL is very strict. And, well, there's a lot of money at stake.
if I was
You
going
know.
to say, if I made the money that they make in the NFL, I don't think I would have a problem with wearing socks
Want
that
to
were
play?
the right length.
Want to play Salary Crunch? We were talking about this in our little pre-show production meeting.
I'm a little nervous about playing Salary Crunch.
Well, let's explain what Salary Crunch is. ESPN has put up a little feature on their website where you can put in your salary and compare it to a Major League Baseball player, for example. And the player we have found here is Justin Verlander. And I think he makes about $17 million a year.
Wow.
Exactly. Wow. Right? So what it does is there's a box and you type in whatever salary you wish to type in, and it will give you information about how what you're being paid compares to what Justin Verlander is being paid. So we typed in your salary, all right, and here's what we have come up with. Your paycheck as compared to Justin Verlander's, and I got to put the glasses on.
My personal paycheck.
Your personal paycheck
compared to Justin Verlander's.
Well,
Okay.
for starters, it tells us that you need to work 800 years in order to make Justin Verlander's annual salary.
And that's without spending a dime.
Well, it's just that would be your cumulative income in 800 years would
800
equal
years.
what Justin Verlander is making this season.
So science needs to start working on making me live longer.
Every time Justin Verlander strikes out a batter, he makes your salary, your annual salary. Every time he records an out, as a matter of fact, there's 27 outs in a baseball game. Every time Justin Verlander gets somebody out, he has just made what you make in an entire year.
Now.
And then, but let's as a matter of fact, let's just go back and do it again. I think the median salary is about $50,000 in this country right now. So we'll just type that in. And who's the player we have now? Oh, Paul Konerko. He's a slugger for the Chicago White Sox. I'm not exactly sure what he's making, but compared to the average American making $50,000 a year, Paul Konerko will make that in 6 innings.
So this is what you're telling me. A, I love my mom and dad, but why didn't they put a bat in my hand early on?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And B,
See what happened?
I should have been a boy,
You should have, and a boy who can hit a curveball.
right? And C, that whatever kids I have are going to have golf clubs, bats, and balls glued to their hands from the time they are born.
And it still won't work.
How do you know?
Well, because the odds are so very long.
Maybe I am like ready. Maybe all of my children will be huge NFL stars.
Well, see, you never know. I'm just saying that
Super athletic.
the odds are incredibly long against you. We all have those dreams. But, boy, I'll tell you, I would say this, follow that plan, but have a fallback. Make sure they get their degrees.
Lottery tickets?
I would say I'd go more the traditional
Oh,
education
okay,
route, that
education.
sort of thing. Yeah,
It's a
the
little-
boring,
a little more work.
the boring, get your degree and your graduate degree and that sort of thing,
I
and
need to
take it
start
from
saving
there.
my salary so I can pay
But,
for golf
yeah.
lessons.
Now, if you could be a professional athlete, what sport would you
Basketball.
choose? Okay.
Oh,
See,
for
I would
sure.
I
I
would
love
play
basketball.
golf. Just walking into the foyer this morning, there's that picture of Michael Patrick interviewing Arnold Palmer in some sunny, lovely locale. And I'm thinking, boy, I love to play golf, right? And the golf tour follows the sun. In fact, the famous movie about Ben Hogan, where Glenn Ford played Ben Hogan, is called Follow the Sun, because that's what the PGA Tour does. They opened 2 weeks ago in Hawaii, and I'm watching that, on a January evening, and I'm thinking, maybe I should just move there and just go to work at a Burger King. It's just beautiful over there.
You know what? I think I have to take that back, and everybody's probably going to laugh at me, but I would love to drive NASCAR.
Oh, well, there you go.
That, I think, would be a really fun sport.
There you go.
Because you're constantly around cars. Mm-hmm. You're traveling to all these beautiful locations. You get to hit Las Vegas
Nobody-
and drive the track, and you get to go fast.
But nobody ever died playing golf. I mean, I actually
there have been people who
well,
have died
it's
playing
true.
golf.
It's true. Yeah.
But
very, pretty
if,
rare.
If you drive right, and the other people around you drive right,
Well,
then you'll be fine.
See, there's your variable that you can't control. The other
there's
people
always
around
risk.
you.
I
Now, I
wonder if-
four-putted once and I died of embarrassment, but that's a whole different deal.
Is there a racer on there?
A racer?
Yeah. Can we
Oh.
compare our salaries to a race car driver?
I'll tell you what. We'll do it a little later. I'll find
Okay.
one. I think there is. We'll find one,
Perfect.
and we'll do the salary crunch with respect to that. All right. With respect to the more traditional sports, we haven't gotten around to any of that. And the Red Wings played last night. They blew a 3-0 lead, but as we're about to hear from Ken Kal, everything turned out okay in the end in St. Louis.
What a wild game last night in St. Louis. Darren Helm netted the game-winning goal in overtime, lifting the Red Wings to a 4-3 overtime victory over the Blues. Detroit wanted to get off to a good start and did just that as Patrick Eaves beat Yaroslav Halak, giving Detroit a 1-0 first period lead. The Red Wings then scored 2 goals on just 3 shots in the second period to take a 3-0 lead over the Blues. Tom Bertuzzi and Jakob Kindl connected for Detroit. Kindl's goal was his first NHL tally. TJ Oshie netted the Blues' lone goal. It was 3-1 Detroit after 40 minutes of play. St. Louis fought their way back to tie the game in the final stanza. Patrick Berglund and David Beck has scored for St. Louis. And then Yuri Hudler set up helm for the game-winning goal in overtime. Both teams had 29 shots in the contest. And the final again, Red Wings 4 and the St. Louis Blues 3. That's the story from St. Louis.
And there's Ken Kal. Thank you very much for that, Ken. Wings are in action at home tomorrow against the Blackhawks. It's a matinee game, 2 o'clock. I'll be there. Looking forward to seeing this matchup of the defending Stanley Cup champions against the team that I think, boy, I'll tell you, if the Wings had knocked off San Jose in the playoffs last year, which they didn't, I really think they'd have given Chicago a run for their money. But, boy, well, I don't want to go back through the whole thing. It's history now. But they had a chance to tie Game 4. They had a 3-1 lead, had a chance to tie the series, and they coughed up that lead in the third period, lost in overtime. And instead of going to San Jose tied 2-2, they were down 3-1, and then their margin for error was gone. And when they lost Game 5, the series was over. And I think if they'd held that lead in Game 4, and it was a bad goal, too. Jimmy Howard, the young Red Wings goaltender, he gave up his post on a shot coming out of the corner, really bad angle. You got to hug the post on that shot, and he just... he left like a 3-inch opening, and the puck's 3 inches across, and there was just enough for it to squeeze in, and that was the whole deal right there. At any rate, speaking of goaltenders, the Red Wings have signed Evgeny Nabokov, who was the goaltender for San Jose, has played this year in the Russian Federation. Their season is over, and so he's available to come back to the NHL, and the Red Wings have signed him. But there's a catch. Nabokov has to clear waivers, which means every other team in the National Hockey League has a chance to match the Red Wings' offer and sign Nabokov for themselves. This guy's a veteran performer in the National Hockey League. He's a good, solid goaltender. And poor Jimmy Howard, who just came back from injury last night, he'd missed 3 games with a knee injury, he's the number 1 goaltender, and he's kind of like, what's the deal? Why are they looking for a goaltender?
Do they have to outbid the Red Wings, or do they have to just match it?
They just have to match it.
So if they match it, then the player gets to pick which team he wants to go to.
No, first team that matches the Red Wings offer gets him. So most
then
people,
why would the Red Wings have even offered anything?
Because there's always a chance that the other 30 teams will pass on him, and then they're getting a good goaltender at a bargain price. And they forced the hands of the other teams. Okay,
so what are the odds of somebody else bidding on him?
Pretty high, because the contract, as I understand it, in today's dollars, we were just talking about what our salaries are compared to a Major League Baseball player and what have you. It's a $570,000 contract, which is peanuts in the National Hockey League. So he's available on the cheap. So odds are some other team will gobble him up. But if they don't, he'll come to Detroit. And you have to remember that one of the situations with the Red Wings right now, Chris Osgood, the number 2 goaltender, who used to be the number 1 goaltender, sustained a groin injury, had to have a sports hernia operation, I think about 2 weeks ago. And he's out till March. So if they do get Nabokov, that solves the problem of a number 2 goaltender. The question is Nabokov going to wind up being your number 1 goaltender? And I remember when Evgeny broke into pro hockey, he played for Cleveland, and they'd come to Grand Rapids when I was the announcer for the Griffins, and I would ask, is it pronounced Nabokov? It turns out, no, it's Nabokov. So we will see. We should know, actually, sometime tomorrow whether or not Nabokov clears waivers and becomes a member of the Detroit Red Wings. So kind of an interesting situation going on there. All right? Hey, they're singing Hockey Time. Let's take a break. We'll be back with more on Firekeepers Friday here on MPS in the Morning. Now, I'll tell you what, you cannot see the Capitol Dome this morning for all the frost coming from your mouth when you exhale. The electronic sign across the street at Cooley Law Stadium says it's 2. Good morning, and welcome to winter in Michigan. Joined right now by Jamie Westenbarger of Forest Hills Financial, Inc. Jamie is a registered principal of Invest Financial and the president of Forest Hills Financial, Inc. Invest is not affiliated with Forest Hills Financial, and the opinions expressed are those of Jamie and not necessarily those of Invest. And with the disclaimer out of the way, Jamie, good morning to you.
Morning, Rich. How you doing?
I'm all right. The big news, it seems to me, would be the developments at Google. They named a new president. Apparently, a lot of people are surprised about this. Larry Page, who's a University of Michigan engineering grad, has been named the CEO of Google. He's a co-founder of that company. How much do you think this guy's making? A 1995 graduate of the U of M College of Engineering, co-founder of Google, and now he's president of Google.
Yeah, he's knocking down a couple dollars, huh?
Yeah.
It was a little bit of a surprise to see him come back, and this is a position he held years ago too. So he's stepping back into a role that he held before Eric Schmidt was brought in as the original, or the chief executive previously. So
it was a surprise though that they made a change at the top. I thought that their earnings had exceeded expectations.
Oh, they exceeded them, and then beat them up some more, and then did a little bit better. So yeah, their earnings were off the chart. They're up 26%.
So that's
from what they were a year ago.
26%.
26%.
So why would you make a change when you're hugely successful like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. According to Google, it's been planned for some time, and this is just simply them moving some pieces around. And Eric Schmidt is going to move on to the chairman of the board or whatever, which, it's very possible. I mean, companies make these types of moves a lot, but it did send kind of some waves through Wall Street and through the tech world because, for whatever reason, a lot of insiders aren't necessarily believing that's true. So it'll be interesting to see how it develops, or maybe it won't develop. Maybe this will be the end we hear of it, and everyone keeps their mouth shut because they're all making billions of dollars every year. So,
boy. Well, I'll tell you, President Obama has named General Electric Chief Executive Jeffrey Immelt to head up a new advisory panel on economic growth. This was announced yesterday. What's your take on that?
Well, anytime government announces a new panel or a new board or a new committee or something like that, you have to kind of skeptically look at it and I guess hope that it's not all smoke and mirrors, and that, maybe they do come up with some game plans on how to go forward. But most economists and most entrepreneurs, which I'm more the entrepreneurial type, will tell you that what government really needs to do in most instances is get out of the way and let the market and the businessman figure out how to do things. So we'll see if this really does anything other than produce a couple of reports that end up on the front page of the newspapers that don't necessarily do a whole lot to change things.
Well, GE pretty much invented outsourcing, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to choose the company that, routinely sent millions of jobs somewhere else for, the last 20 or 30 years. So, but one thing with GE is we always say that GE is kind of like a mini index all on itself because they own just about everything. So they have their hands in so many different industries that, someone who's run that company is going to definitely have some of the experience that you would think would be necessary to kind of get an overall look at the economy and maybe come up with some ideas to move things forward.
What did you think of the State of the State night before last and Rick Snyder's vision moving forward?
It was good. I was, I think like everybody else, we wanted to hear some things that make you positive, and I think some of those things were there. And I think for myself, one of the biggest things is with Rick Snyder being a businessman and coming from the business community, and me being a small business owner, I think we might actually have a voice in Lansing, which has been lacking for a long time. So hopefully that continues to be the case, and he continues to look out for the companies that are the smaller companies, because realistically, even though the big companies make the newspaper, the small ones are the ones generating all the jobs in the state.
Housing numbers came out yesterday, and as I understand it, the worst showing for existing home sales in something on the order of 30 years. I keep hoping we have turned the corner on housing, but again, home values continue to drop, and again, the sales numbers are just atrocious.
Yeah, but it depends on how you look at the numbers, and again, this is what happens so often. I think that you see a situation where the numbers get dissected and split and overanalyzed because these 24-hour news networks always have to have a new headline. I mean, there actually was a 12% rise in existing home sales, over the same period of time, and we had fewer weekly jobless claims than we've had, the week before, but that's not as exciting as, kind of twisting the number and making it, I think for some specific period of time, they were able to dissect that it was worse than it's been in 30 years or something. So a lot of times these numbers are just we're so over bombarded with them, and a lot of times it's the same report being reported in 3 different ways to make it look like it's a new report.
Thanks for helping us sort it out, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Hey, take care.
Jamie Westenbarger, Forest Hills Financial. Jamie is a registered principal of Invest Financial and president of Forest Hills Financial, Inc. Invest is not affiliated with Forest Hills Financial, and the opinions expressed are those of Jamie and not necessarily those of Invest. We're going to take a break, come back and talk about health care repeal next on MPS in the Morning. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick on this Friday morning. You probably notice a change in the tone of my voice, Amanda, because I'm looking at a picture right now on, I'm not sure if it's from Detroit News or MLive, but it's the suspect being arraigned yesterday in the shooting of that Livonia police officer just a couple of nights ago. And I mentioned that it hit me closer to home than a police shooting ever had, because this hockey game that I play in a couple of days a week down in suburban Detroit. And Al Rosenberg drives all the way down from Okemos twice a week to play hockey with us. And we've been joined by some police officers, some who work for the West Bloomfield Police Department, and one guy's an Ingham County Sheriff's deputy, as a matter of fact. And so I've gotten to know these guys and talk to them and what have you. And it just struck me when this Livonia officer was shot to death on Tuesday, how I would feel if it had been one of these guys that I know. And I mentioned to these guys yesterday that, at Red Wings games, there's at some point, and at Tigers games too for that matter, all the sports, Lions as well, they, during a stop in the play, will recognize veterans who are in attendance. They may single out a veteran or a group of veterans, and everybody stands and applauds and what have you. And I said to these guys, they should do that for law enforcement and firefighters as well, because these are guys that are putting their lives on the line. And it really came home to me, that phrase, putting your life on the line, when this Livonia police officer died. His funeral is today, and it's just so sad. And what struck me, the officer who was killed, it was they were surveilling these suspects, and in the course of the surveillance, these suspects broke into a house, and the officer was shot with a gun that the perpetrator had just stolen from the home. Mm-hmm. That is to say, had there not been a home invasion, there wouldn't have been a gun to shoot this cop, and he'd still be alive today. First officer in Livonia history to be killed in the line of duty, Officer Larry Neheisel, and he'll be buried today, and that's so sad. But the picture in the paper, get a load of this jerk, 48-year-old man, and he's wearing the orange and white prison jumpsuit, and you see the tattoos, and you just, 48-year-old man. He, of course, life without parole if he's convicted, that sort of thing. And it was his brother who was the other perpetrator who was shot, and it was his ex-wife who was waiting in the getaway car, and she's been arrested, and it's just so needless. It makes you think of the movie Fargo right at the end. And again, it's a movie's fiction, although this was based on a true story apparently. But when they're driving away the suspect in the police car right at the end of the movie, and Frances McDermott is saying, all of this over some money, over a few dollars, and it's such a beautiful day, and now, again, the funeral today for that Livonia police officer. And also, overnight, 2 police officers were shot and killed in Miami, Florida.
And I can tell you that all funerals are emotional.
Sure.
But if you go to a funeral of somebody that has served, I have a best friend whose father had passed away, and he was a firefighter, and that was the most emotional funeral I have ever been to.
Sure.
And at the very end of it, you hear this voice come over the PA system, and it says, a call, we're going to ring the bell for our fallen brother, and we're sending him home. And you hear the bells ring, and it actually went out to all the fire stations in the state of Michigan. And you're sitting there and you're listening to it, and I can tell you, it doesn't matter what reason that you're there for, whether it was your parent or a friend of theirs, or just because you want to support them, that is the most emotional
Sure.
funeral that you will
Sure.
ever go to.
Yeah. So I would just issue the call this morning to the sports teams. If you're gonna honor the military, and you should, you know, let's give these guys their props every now and again as well, because I have a newfound respect for the job they do. Again, getting to know these guys on a personal basis, and I really appreciate's not a strong enough word, but I do appreciate what they do for us right until the moment they write me that ticket for failure to stop. At which point, of course, it's diminished somewhat. But again, clearly the saddest story of the week. The good news today that we can talk about: Gabrielle Giffords, the Congresswoman from Tucson, Arizona, will be airlifted from Tucson to a rehabilitation center in Houston. She's due in Houston early this afternoon at Hobby Airport. She'll be taken to a rehab center if she continues to amaze her doctors with the scope of her recovery. They just can't believe it. She is able to stand now with some assistance. So yesterday, for the first time since she was shot 13 days ago, they took her outside and she got to soak up some of those rays of sunshine there in Arizona. And her husband says that she is the strongest woman he's ever met, and she's a fighter, and he believes she's going to come through. And let's pray that that's true. Okay. All right. Let's take a break as we approach the top of the hour. We have Brad Melzer coming up, and Amanda's really excited about this. He's got a new book out. He's got the TV series, and I love history, so this is going to be great for me.
It'll be a wonderful interview.
Exactly. Well, I'm conducting it, so I don't know if we want to go to wonderful just yet, but we'll try to make it passable at best, and you're going to help me out, so it will be wonderful. So we'll look forward to that. We'll take a break and be back with you on the other side. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick. Bundle up, everybody. It's cold outside. Good morning, Michigan. It's getting colder out there, if you can believe it. It was already pretty cold when we started this morning. The electronic sign outside our studio here on the Avenue of Michigan was reading, like 5, and now it's down to 2, and my computer temperature is down to 10 from 13 earlier. And all we can tell you is it's cold out there. I've rarely seen our producer, the lovely, the talented, really good producer, Amanda Wall, as excited as she is right now. Not even when I was explaining to her earlier this morning the intricacies of hockey underwear. She's way beyond that, and that is because our guest Brad Melzer, an award-winning author, a New York Times best-selling author, and I'm trying to think of the brains, the guy behind the great series on the History Channel, is joining us right now this morning, and he's out with his new book, The Inner Circle, just released. We've got a copy of it here on the desk. Brad, thanks for joining us. And what's the book about?
The Inner Circle is about. Well, let me tell you where it starts, and I can tell you what it's about.
There you go.
A couple years ago, I got a call from the Department of Homeland Security. They asked me to come in and brainstorm different ways for terrorists to attack the United States. And my first thought was, if they're calling me, we have bigger problems than anybody thinks, right? But I was honored to be part of the Red Cell program, and I went in, was paired with Secret Service agents and with chemists and given targets, and we tried to attack them. But what I was struck by was just that they were calling on regular, ordinary citizens, just like myself. And I traced that back through history, and it traced back to a man named George Washington. And George Washington used to have his own spy ring. And in that spy ring, he used to use regular citizens because he said no one will look twice at them. And they would write in invisible ink, move messages. And I love that idea, so I said to my guy in Homeland Security, I said, wouldn't it be cool if in my new novel, if it was about the idea that George Washington's spy ring still exists to this very day? And he said to me, what makes you think it doesn't? And I said, what are you talking about? He says, think about it. It was one of George Washington's greatest success stories. Why would he ever disband it? And that's what the book is really about. The Inner Circle opens with the idea that a young archivist in the National Archives finds out that George Washington's spy ring still exists to this very day. He doesn't know who they're working for, but the greatest secret of the presidency is about to be revealed, and that's where The Inner Circle as a thriller begins.
But we can't disclose what the greatest secret of the president is in this forum this morning, because that would ruin the book, right?
You don't want to, unless you want a lot of people mad at you. But
I don't want that, no.
There's a guy who went and did a book signing once, and he said, I'm going to read for you, my audience, and he read from the last chapter of his Whodunit.
Oh, my.
Oh,
He's dead now.
Well, you know what? I used to be a hockey announcer, and what guys would do, pranks are being played all the time. Some guy'd be working on a 400-page murder mystery, and he'd get to the last 10 pages, and somebody would have torn them out of the book.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one, too. I like that.
So there you go. So, well, we certainly want to say it's a beautiful book. We've got a copy of it right here on the table. I got to tell you, Amanda is just she's one of your great fans. I'm just going to let her talk for a few moments here.
I am infatuated with the show Decoded. I think it is brilliant. And I sat and watched one day with my husband. We found it on demand on Comcast, and I have to say that I don't think I got anything done because I sat and watched about 4 or 5 episodes in a row. How did you come up with the thought process of the show?
Yeah, a couple years ago, as you can see from even the Inner Circle, I love to write about mysterious things. I wrote a book called The Book of Fate. And The Book of Fate was about the Freemasons and the secret codes that Thomas Jefferson used to use. And one of the heads of the History Channel read it and said, we should do a TV show like this. So they came to me, they said, give us your 10 best mysteries, and we'll give you a team to solve them. And that's what we do every week. And as you saw last night's episode of Decoded, and let's be clear, it's actually called Brad Meltzer's Decoded. That's the greatest title of all time. I said to my wife, honey, what are we doing for Brad Meltzer's dinner? Because yesterday we had Brad Meltzer's chicken, and tonight we're having Brad Meltzer's pasta. And she said, you can go sleep on Brad Meltzer's couch.
There we go. Hey, if it works, you got to run with it.
Yeah, no, for sure. But the truth is we solved different mysteries, but last night we actually dealt with the one in the Inner Circle, George Washington spying. And we tried to figure out, and looked at who started it, where it came from, the invisible ink they used, the secret codes that they used. And I love, in my novels, getting the details right. So the show really began with that. Even in the novel for the Inner Circle, I went to the National Archives, and I said to them, how do you store all this stuff? And they said, storage is easy. The harder part is temperature, is trying to keep the stuff cool. That's how you preserve documents. And what was amazing to me, and I love, is they said, well, to do it, we have underground caves all across the country. I said, wait, you're telling me the National Archives has secret underground caves? I want to see those caves. So just like we do in the show, I went in the novel, the last 100 pages of the Inner Circle, when you read it, it's just like the TV show. It takes you to a place you've never seen. And I don't want to ruin the ending of the book, but all the caves that you see, they're all real. I went in them. I dressed up the Archives cave a little bit.
Well, they use the old salt mines in Detroit for that, don't they?
Yeah, you know what? It's exactly right. The salt mines are used. I was just there in Michigan last night, and we were talking about that they're used for storage. And I just love the idea that there's hidden storage below us. What you see in the very back of the cave, I dressed up, they were in transition, but what you see in the very back of the cave is real too. And basically that's where the show came from. They see all the real details that I'll put into the Inner Circle or into the novels, and then they'll say, let's do that as an episode. And so we've looked at the hidden messages that are hidden in the Statue of Liberty. We've looked at whether John Wilkes Booth really lived long after he shot Abraham Lincoln, unlike the history books say. And everyone always rolls their eyes until they see that we got John Wilkes Booth family member telling us the greatest family secret of her family, and then they go, oh my gosh, this is real. And that's what Decoded does every week, is pull apart a different part of history.
And that was one of my favorite episodes, and I want to know if do you keep going afterwards? Because I know in the episode you were trying to test to see if the person you thought was John Wilkes Booth really was.
Yeah, no, the only way to find out is with a DNA test, and what's great is, in the episode we said, let's do the DNA test. The government said no to it a couple of years back, and I just saw when the Inner Circle book tour went through Virginia, I saw the lawyer who represents John Wilkes Booth's family, and he said to me that it's just amazing the outcry from the show has brought new interest into it, and so they're going to probably wind up going back to court with it. And the idea that we get the opportunity to potentially change history is just humbling to me.
Maybe you could wind up clearing Roger Mudd's great-grandfather, who was the doctor who set John Wilkes Booth's leg.
Yeah, no, trust me. I'll tell you this: he's still a bad guy. Make no mistake, he still did what he did. But we proved funny things even on the episode. A lot of people say that's where the phrase "your name is mud" came from.
Sure.
You know, that's not true at all. It actually came from England years before that.
Really?
But I'll give you a better one than that. On last night's episode, and this is you see this when you read The Inner Circle. George Washington used to write in invisible ink, and what they did is they would write a normal letter in black regular writing, and then they would write in invisible ink between the lines of the letter. So you would have to put in the invisible ink in between the lines, and that's where the phrase "read between the lines" comes from.
Wow.
Yeah, I love that, and I put that in my novel, and then they saw that, and they said, we got to put that in the TV show, so we put that in Decoded as well.
See, I've never understood people who say, "Oh, history is boring." I love history. It's when you find out what the real story is, what the truth of the matter is.
Exactly right. You know, history is not a bunch of dates to be memorized.
Right.
History is a selection process, and it doesn't just choose a person in a moment and slam them together. History chooses every single one of us every single day, and the only question is, do you hear the call? And when I wrote The Inner Circle, that's what I wanted the book to be about, really, truly about. And so you really see in this archivist and his love of history, and, you know, one of my favorite details that we found in the book is, this is a true story, Ronald Reagan, during his last moments in the White House, he wrote a secret note. And the note said, "Don't let the turkeys get you down." And he scribbled a note and slid it into the Oval Office desk. And he left that note for George Bush, who left a note for Bill Clinton when he left office, who left one for W, who left one for Obama. It's the greatest private tradition of the modern presidency. And when I was researching my thriller, and listen, The Inner Circle is a thriller. It's a mystery, right? I can make up whatever I want. But a couple of years ago, I got a letter from George Bush Sr., the dad, who said to me, "I like your novels. I like your novel, The Millionaires," he said, "and would you sign a copy for me? And listen, you're the president. I'll send you a free book." Right?
There you go.
You get a free book. And so I sent him a free book. He's been helping me. He helped me with research on one of my books. And I said, "Sir, I'm researching my new thriller. It's called The Inner Circle." I said, "I want to know, could George Washington's spy ring still exist? And could you send the information about it from person to person in those secret letters?" And I waited for a reply, and eventually the reply came, and it said, "The president wants you to have this." And attached to the email was the secret letter Bush sent me for the first time ever, the secret letter that he wrote to Bill Clinton. And
wow.
It was my response. I said, "Wow." And my first thought is, oh my gosh, he sent me secret code. And so I did what we do on Decoded. I checked to see if it was Freemason code, Thomas Jefferson's code. I checked to see if the second letter of every word spelled out, "We hate you, Bill." I mean, I was just like, what's in this thing? But it was just a really generous letter. But I used the details that he gave me to really flesh out the president in The Inner Circle. So even though it's fiction, it's always based on, as best I can, real facts.
Brad, thanks so much for joining us. Brad Meltzer, The Inner Circle's the book. The show's on the History Channel, and Amanda and I are going to be fighting over who gets to take the promotional copy home. Brad, thanks again. We'll take a break. Be back with more on MPS in the Morning. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick on this Friday morning. At home, I am surrounded by beautiful women. I have a wife and a daughter, and I am having much the same sensation here this morning in our studios on the Avenue of Michigan. Of course, the lovely, talented Amanda Wallace here. Now our world correspondent, Nikki Hale, drops by. Nikki, good to see you, as always.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. It's good to see you.
Yes.
What the big controversy this morning appears to be the fallout from Ricky Gervais' a bit weird comments that he made at the Golden Globes on Sunday.
Yeah, he's known for that, though. I mean, really, he likes being outside the box. He's not your fuzzy, cuddly, comedian, really, and he doesn't really care, I don't think.
Right.
He's made so much money with The Office and everything else that he's
Gotta
done.
be yourself.
Right,
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the comment he made. He's actually been interviewed by the Larry King replacement, and he said, if I'm going to go on there and be fuzzy and cuddly, I could be anybody else. So what's the point? There's a reason they hired me to do it. But he is also saying he's done it 2 years in a row, and he's now done. That's it for him. He doesn't want to host the Golden Globes again. So we'll see.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
And he's made his point, I think, because twice he did the same thing. I mean, he picked on people and was very straightforward about his comments, I think.
Now, what did he? What engendered the most response of his remarks on Sunday?
I think the worst part of it was talking about the drug abuse in Hollywood and the alcohol abuse. We saw a lot of stories last year. Charlie Sheen, the things that happened with Tiger Woods, Lindsay Lohan, all those issues happening, and how it's not just those folks that are in the media, that a lot of Hollywood celebrities, and I think he singled out some folks that weren't expecting it.
Yeah.
And I think that was where they thought, whoa, okay, what the heck's going on here?
Yeah. You were at the Princess Diana exhibit in Grand Rapids.
I was. It is so phenomenal. I was just amazed by it. It's not a very big exhibit by any means. It took us about an hour to get through it. And that
Van Andel Museum?
It's the art museum, yes, in Grand Rapids. And it's brought to you by the DeVos family, and it's just wonderful. The way they set it up, you walk through different chambers, and you walk through pretty much her life history. And there's lots of things from her childhood, which I thought was really nice. Books and letters that she wrote to her parents, and videos of her. Apparently, one of her favorite things to do was swimming. Big swimmer, and so lots of little videos of her jumping in the pool and doing all these funny things. But there was one room that actually moved me quite a bit, which was the funeral room. They had a huge screen showing images of the funeral, playing Candle in the Wind by Elton John. The original lyrics, handwritten lyrics, are in there on display where he wrote it. Also, the eulogy that her brother wrote and read is on display in there as well. It's a dark room. It just really sinks in. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like reliving the whole thing over again. And then they bring you back to, hey, it's Diana, it's wonderful, it's a celebration of her life, and they've got all of her dresses, and it shows.
I was going to say, I would expect there'd be a gown or two there.
Oh gosh, yeah, the wedding dress is there. I spent hours, I should say hours. My husband was like, come on, moving on, but I'm staring at the dress and staring at a picture going, is this the real one? Really? Oh, look, is that a little bit different? But it is the real dress. And
what
it's
did that
wonderful.
cost? Did it say? Because it was probably not Filene's basement there.
No. It didn't say what the cost was, but I can tell you the train is literally the length of the room. It is huge. I don't even know how she kept that on her head. I mean, it must have been held on by something else, because that must have been so heavy. So, I mean, very, very long. I can't even tell you.
I saw the most interesting film on during a pledge drive recently. It was original footage of the coronation of Queen Elizabeth.
Wow.
Shot, I believe that was 1952, right?
Yep, that's it.
And
yeah.
it's a fairly remarkable ceremony of coronation. It hasn't happened in our lifetime.
No, it
but
hasn't,
it's really quite the thing.
Yeah, it is. It's very lavish.
I would guess a royal wedding is the next best thing, but even so, it'll pale in comparison.
Right. I mean, just from the jewels standpoint, what you see at the coronation, what you see at a wedding, I mean, there's not even comparison, because the queen or the king obviously wear the most beautiful crowns with the most lavish stones in it and all that fun stuff. And I mean, the princess or prince or king, they would wear something at a wedding, but I think still the coronation is bigger. The wedding's a more romantic thing, I think.
Speaking of the wedding, it's in April, right?
Yes.
Is she going to be a princess, a duchess, a lady? What's the title going to be?
I haven't actually heard on that yet.
Now, you'd think that would be widely known by now.
Yeah, and they probably have. I just haven't read anything on that.
Okay.
I know the
no, I actually saw a story where it hasn't been announced.
Oh,
and that struck me as odd.
And you know what? I think it all depends on her family history, where they're from. I don't know much about Kate Middleton, to be honest with you. I don't know. I know Princess. I don't know that they are actually linked in, and I think that is that plays a part in it. And maybe that's where they're coming from. I don't know.
Yeah.
So if she gets married
out to another tennis player saying, "Oh, I think she's pregnant."
Yeah.
And the Kleisters called about it in their live interview afterwards, and but they're getting ready for this particular match, and somebody went out and bounced a tennis ball on the court, and there was a dead spot. And the ball, I mean, it didn't bounce at all. It was as though it were Velcro. I mean, try bouncing a tennis ball against anything and having it just stick, right?
It doesn't, right? It
bounces. Of course it won't. It's designed to bounce. They dropped the ball in this one spot on the court, and it just didn't move at all.
Oh,
and like I said, it was wait till you see it. It's like, it was Velcro hitting Velcro. It just stuck.
And is this on the actual court?
Absolutely.
Or outside the
no, it was on the court. It was near the net. They actually, they couldn't play the match. They couldn't at least start the match because, the ball might stick there.
Might hit that area.
Yeah,
right.
It turns out what happened was it had gotten so warm that an air bubble had formed, something expanded underneath the court, and they had to bring workmen out with a drill and drill little holes in there to let the air out, and then the dead spot went away. Well, wait till you see this video. Somebody they dropped the ball from about chest high, and it just sticks. It was amazing.
You almost think it's like a gag video or something.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I mean, if a tennis ball doesn't bounce, it at least will roll quite far.
And my other observation was, we're looking at 2 degrees across the street here in the capital city. It looked pretty pleasant down there in Australia today.
I know, and I heard
short sleeve shirts and what have you.
I had a couple of clients of mine yesterday that were flying out to Florida, and I know it was 82 degrees in Florida, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, you are so lucky to be picking this weekend to go because it is cold today. My car said 6. I know you've got a couple of discrepancies, but I don't care. Anything below 32, to be honest, is just freezing.
Oh, really. It's just it's a distinction without a difference when you're talking about 12 degrees or 10 degrees or 6 degrees. But
right, exactly. It's just not hope we don't get too much snow.
Yeah. Well, but even going down to Florida, I mean, they've had some day when those Spartans were down there for the bowl game. They had some nights where it was down into the 30s.
I know.
In Central Florida. So you just can't have that.
We've had some heavy shifts in weather this year. I'm sure.
Way to hang in there, Nikki.
Well, thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming by. Always good to see you.
Yes, you too.
All right. Nikki Hale, our world correspondent, joining us here. Amanda, what's coming up next? I'm not paying attention. Something great.
Ron Van Timmeren about movies.
That is something great.
It's the movie time.
Outstanding. All right. We'll do that next as we continue on MPS in the Morning. My name's Rich Kincaid. I am bench strength on MPS in the Morning, filling in today for Michael Patrick, who will be back with you on Monday. And we're doing everything we can just to stay warm here in the capital city, where the stadium thermometer across the street tells us it is 2 degrees outside. That's not counting the wind chill. We are getting some gusty winds today, and it's going to be still cold well into next week, no matter where in the great state of Michigan you find yourself. So just bundle up, and it'll be back up into the 30s in about a week. But until then, night times in the single digits, and during the afternoon will be in the teens, all right? One of my favorite segments when I get to fill in for Michael Patrick is what's going on at the movies. Ron Van Timmeren from Celebration Cinema is joining us. And Ron, I don't want to throw you a curve here, but I was watching Lawrence O'Donnell's program last night on MSNBC, and he closed with a movie promo about, and the movie, and I can't remember the title of it, but it's about unemployment. Had a great cast, and it was written by the guy who wrote The West Wing. Now, it's opening today, but they said in only 100 markets, so I don't know if you have it at Celebration Cinemas, but are you aware of the film I'm trying to describe?
Yeah, I think it's called No Way Out or The Way Out or something like that, and a small distributor, The Way Back. That's what it is.
Okay, yeah.
No, that's not it either, because that's about fleeing a Siberian gulag. Okay, never mind. It's not that one.
Well, that sounds good, too. But at any rate,
Man is a limited release this week, and that is about corporate downsizing. That must be the one.
That's the one. There we go. Yeah.
Company Men, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Right.
It may be playing in the Detroit area. I'm not sure. Our Celebration Cinemas in Grand Rapids and around the rest of the state do not have that this week.
Okay, but it may be coming down in the pipeline in the next week or two. But I got to tell you, from the previews I saw, it looked like a terrific movie. Great cast.
Yeah, I've heard it's getting good reviews, and it's a bit of a comedy, they're calling it, as well as a drama. So looking forward to that. The Weinstein Company distributing that. They're kind of busy this week with the King's Speech and getting ready for their big Academy Award campaign starting next week when the Oscars come out next Tuesday.
What do you got going on at Celebration Cinema this weekend?
Well, you know what, Rich, I couldn't help but when you were talking about the weather and the temperatures, I just got to tell you something very bizarre is happening at the Getty Drive-In in Muskegon, and if people from around the state want to go see a drive-in movie in the wintertime, we are going to play Fargo outside at the Getty Drive-In tomorrow at dusk. And so check out celebrationcinema.com for details.
Wow.
But it's a pretty surreal thing. We did it last year to watch a drive-in movie set in Fargo at the Getty Drive-In in Muskegon in the wintertime.
Especially Fargo, which is, of course, shot in the wintertime. The only way you can improve on that is to have it in 3D.
You're going to get a 3D effect when 1 to 3 inches is falling tomorrow evening at the drive-in.
Yeah, and a classic film.
Snowflakes.
Yeah, a classic film as well.
Yeah,
So.
and there's only one wide release this week. I can't quite figure this out. Hollywood, I guess they're gearing up for the Justin Bieber concert movie coming in a couple of weeks here. But clearing the path, No Strings Attached, which is a R-rated romantic comedy. Some call it a sex farce. We got Natalie Portman and Ashton Kutcher there. They're the two friends who are trying to figure out if they can have a commitment-free sexual relationship. What could go wrong with that, Rich?
Yeah, nothing at all. Yeah, exactly right. You know, Ron, I got to tell you, a dearth of new releases this week. But when the last time I was in for Michael Patrick, it's been a while back, and we were talking about the movies coming out for Christmas time, and you told me about a film. I think it was called Tangled. And I based on what you said, I told my wife and daughter, this guy says this movie is just terrific, just great, and they were looking for a movie to go see. They went and saw it, and they said it was just great. So your reviews are right on the mark.
Well, thank you. And Tangled, of course, it's hard to bet against Disney when they're making family movies. And
yeah, their clunkers are good.
Excuse me?
I say their clunkers are good.
Exactly. They've got the magic formula. Right now, $181 million in domestic box office, just outside the top 10 still. And if you were a fan of Beauty and the Beast or Little Mermaid, those kind of traditional animated movies, then Tangled is absolutely the best.
We got 90 seconds left in the segment. Just the one new release this weekend. What's hot that's been out for a week or two?
Well, last week, the number one movie by far was The Green Hornet. So Seth Rogen's comedy definitely doing the job. The Dilemma from director Ron Howard, that was second place. A little bit disappointing at only about $20 million on the 4-day weekend, but love Vince Vaughn, love Kevin James, good cast there. True Grit, third best this weekend.
Hey, is that a good movie?
That is my favorite movie of the holiday season. I bet it's going to get a boatload of Oscar nominations when they come out next week. Also, The King's Speech, Black Swan, Little Fockers, Tron, Fighter, Yogi Bear, and Season of the Witch rounding out the top 10.
Okay, another big weekend at Celebration Cinemas. I got to go see True Grit. I've wanted to see that, and you put it back in my mind, so I'll go see that this weekend.
Definitely. It is the best thing out there.
All right, Ron Van Timmeren from Celebration Cinema. Thanks as always, Ron, and we'll check back with you next week.
See the movies.
Oh, you betcha. All right, we move on here on a Friday, a cold Friday here in our great state of Michigan. I'm Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick Shields, and we shall soldier on in just a moment. Well, sunrise here in mid-Michigan at our studios, just up the street from the Capitol. We're getting a good look at that on the TV side, and it tells us it's 5 degrees right now here in Lansing, and it's pretty cold everywhere else you happen to go in Michigan. Bill Huizenga, a freshman congressman from the Holland area, joining us right now here on MPS in the Morning. Congressman, I don't want to throw you a loop. Actually, I guess I do. What does a congressman make? What's your salary? So I don't have... We're going to play salary. We're going to play salary crunch with you right now.
All right, salary crunch.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. We're going
to. As I've just discovered, actually, I just sat down with our benefits people.
Mm-hmm.
We get paid once a month, but the total salary is $174.
174.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to compare you to LeBron James, who has signed a $110 million contract. So at your rate of pay, LeBron James makes what you make for a year in 3/4 of a game. He makes your annual salary every time he collects 6 rebounds and every time he scores 24 points. And you would have to work to earn what LeBron James makes. You would have to work 105 years to earn his annual salary.
Wow.
So now you're.
Hey, that's not a bad gig if you can get it. I'm not sure that's the toughest job in the world, but God blessed him with some skills that I will never have.
Oh, there you go. So, of course, my issue would be just, geez, let's start collecting taxes from that guy. But at any rate, how have you found your first couple of weeks in Congress?
Well, Rich, it's been, as you can imagine, very eventful. We had the swearing in that was happening, and just so hopeful. Really optimistic with the new majority coming in, and then of course the tragedy with Gabby Giffords getting shot really put a sobering feel on on everybody.
How has that affected you personally? Did you find yourself with a newfound concern for your own personal safety?
Well, you have to remember, I had been a district director for
Mm-hmm.
Congressman Hoekstra, and seeing 3 of her district staffers shot, one of them killed,
Mm-hmm.
really brought it home. But it wasn't the first time that we had to think about this stuff. When I was working with Pete, we dealt with impeachment. You want to talk about some upset people? I mean, it was that was very emotional. Flag burning, the start of the war. Threats that came in then. Pete led the Teamsters investigation into their election, and then of course we had 9/11 and the anthrax attacks that happened. So, safety has been part of our thinking all along for our constituents, for our district staff, for our district offices, and that's really where more of the challenge is. You get to Washington and there's a cop on every corner out there, but it certainly isn't the case back here in Michigan.
Yeah, is that does it give you pause when you come back and hold a constituent event now?
Well, we're determined not to let some nut handcuff democracy here, and we're in fact I'm doing a town hall meeting today with concentrated on seniors and at a senior center. I've done 3 telephone town halls. And we've got a series of live town hall meetings that we're going to be doing in the coming weeks. But I did on one of our telephone town hall meetings, or actually on all 3 of them, we asked one question: would you be more or less likely to come to a public event with someone like myself or another elected official? And over 80% of the people said they would be just as likely to come. And this was 3-4 days after the shooting.
Yeah.
And about 10% said they weren't sure, and about 10% said they would be less likely. And I think the American people are seeing it for what it is. It's a lone gunman who allegedly had done this that just seems very disturbed. It wasn't politically motivated. It wasn't a lot of the other things that it's trying to be characterized as. And I think people see that.
What the news with respect to Congresswoman Giffords just seems to be amazing right now. What are they saying on the Hill about it? It just seems, given the circumstances, so very upbeat, and it's just like the answer to many prayers.
Prayers, yeah, that's exactly right. I think it is answer to prayer, and with her being moved to Houston, a number of our colleagues from Arizona and some of her very close friends have gone down there and have seen her. She's responding. All the media reports about her and her husband and the interplay that they're having, and the fact that she's going to get moved down to Houston for recovery so soon. I mean, it's just stunning. I mean, if you would think, someone getting shot in the head like that and being able to have this kind of recovery. But everybody who knows her well says there's nobody who's a bigger fighter than Gabby Giffords.
There was a blog post that got some publicity yesterday where somebody was saying it's time to hold a special election and fill her seat. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's way too early. Yeah. We don't know what her recovery rate's going to be. Certainly wouldn't be the first time that we've had people that have either fallen ill naturally or had something happen, continue in their post, and having her attacked, basically fulfilling her duties. We're barely a week into this, or almost 2 weeks into this. I think that's way too early to call for that.
Congressman, thanks for playing Salary Crunch, and thanks for your thoughts. Good luck to you in D.C.
All right, thanks, and here's to LeBron James.
There you have it. All right, Congressman Bill Huizenga joining us this morning on MPS in the Morning. Rich Kincaid, the out of the bullpen on this Friday morning. We'll be back with more after the break.